Thank you for joining our webinar on the coverage plans. In our webinar today, we will be talking about the coverage plans and how they need to be set up to make sure your claims are going through properly with the correct information. So we're going to go ahead and get started. Under File, Billing, and Billing Setup, you'll have an option for coverage plans. Okay, when we go into our coverage plans on this screen, this is our coverage plan maintenance. As you know, this shows all of your coverage plans that are active in the system and those that have been marked as inactive. Okay, what we're going to do today is we are going to add a brand new coverage plan and just kind of walk through the entire process of how that should be set up to go electronically. So we're going to go ahead over on the right side and click Add. Okay, that is going to give us a blank screen to add our new coverage plan. And we're just going to kind of make this up as we go. And this one is going to be a United Healthcare plan. Alright, we're going to go ahead and put in that address, whatever it might be. And we're going to go ahead and put in our city, state, and zip just like our other address fields. The +4 on the coverage plan address is not required. If you have it, great, you can go ahead and put it in, but it is not required. Okay. Then we have our pre-cert phone number for that insurance plan. We also have a benefit confirmation phone number that you can add as well. Now, neither of these phone numbers show up on this previous screen. Okay, when you're looking at your list of insurances, these two phone numbers will not show up here. They will show in the patient's account. However, in order to get our phone number to show up on this previous search window, that's going to be where the contact phone number comes into play. Okay, so this phone number is going to show on this previous screen for United Healthcare. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and we're just going to search United Healthcare and go back and find the one that we just entered so you can see what it looks like. Okay, so here's our phone number right here. Alright, this is the one that we added into the contact information. Now, the rest of the information on this general tab, you have a contact, so this can be your United Healthcare rep. Okay, maybe you have their fax number. Maybe you have a second contact. You can go ahead and fill that information out. And this is for notes about that particular plan, possibly the best time to reach your rep, an email address, any notes that you need to have for United Healthcare. Up in the top right corner, we have our coverage classification. You can see it defaulted to commercial. Okay. Now, in this drop down, if this were a Blue Cross plan, we can go ahead and select Blue Cross Blue Shield. If it were TRICARE, we can do Champus. If, it's any Medicaid, Medicare Part B, you can go ahead and choose that appropriately. By default, all of them will go to commercial, which is fine. Your claims will go through with that information. The next box is your rate link. Now, we all know that there's multiple rate schedules. Some people choose to enter them in the system, some don't, and that's okay. So, the purpose of this box, maybe United Healthcare follows the Medicare rate schedule. Okay, so I can go ahead and put Medicare as my rate link, and any patient who has this particular United Healthcare is going to use that Medicare fee schedule. Okay, if you wanted to have a separate United Healthcare insurance rate plan set up, you can go ahead and link this insurance to the appropriate United Healthcare fee schedule that you have set up in your system. Okay, that is what that box is for. Essentially, it makes it so you do not have to create 12 different rate schedules when it's really for the same parent insurance. Alright, then we have our Coverages Medigap box. The purpose of Coverages Medigap is when this insurance is secondary to Medicare, meaning Medicare will cross it over for us, we want to go ahead and mark this coverage as a Medigap. Now you can see below it says see information regarding automatic crossovers on the Claim Processing tab. So then we come over to the Claim Processing tab, which is the second tab, and about halfway down on the left side we have Medicare automatic crossover. These two boxes go together. If one is checked, the other one has to be checked also. These boxes only come into play when Medicare is primary to this insurance on any patient's account. If this United Healthcare is secondary to Blue Cross or to Aetna or to any other coverage, these boxes mean nothing. Okay, so again, it's only when that insurance here is secondary to Medicare. What those boxes will do is when you process your claim to Medicare as a primary and you have this United Healthcare secondary, it's going to mark the secondary claim as being processed as well, because we're assuming that Medicare will cross that claim over to the secondary insurance, which is United Healthcare. Okay, it prevents that secondary from processing out of our system electronically or on paper. Now, the other boxes on this tab for claim processing, the first one you have an electronic payer ID number. Okay, if you happen to know the 5-digit payer ID number from the insurance, you can go ahead and put that here. If you don't know it, that's okay. We can use a 4-digit CPID or 4-digit payer ID from Relay Health or the 5-digit payer ID from Gateway, depending on which clearinghouse you are using. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and we're just going to mark this in as payer ID. Now, the checkbox that says delay claim until activity from primary, this box is defaulted to be checked. You want it to be checked because if United Healthcare, we know that this insurance could be primary or secondary for any given patient. Okay, if it's primary, great, it's going to process like it's supposed to. If it is a secondary, then we want this box to be checked so that that secondary claim does not process until you've received action from your primary insurance. So go ahead and leave that box checked. If United Healthcare requires a referral authorization, you can check this box, and then it's going to alert you and your staff every time that account is opened if a referral is required, whether or not they have referrals on file. Okay, if this does not require a referral authorization, go ahead and just leave that unchecked. Now, down toward the bottom, module to use when printing UB04 forms. In this drop-down, you're going to see quite a few options, some of them state-specific. We don't want to use any of those that are state-specific, okay? The only valid UB04 module is the one that says UB04 module. Prior to 5010, we had different states required different pieces of information, different formats for the UBs, and that's why we have all of the other state-specific ones in here. Now with 5010 formatting, UB04 is the only valid form. So make sure that says UB04 if you are printing institutional claims on a UB form, okay? Or if you need them to go electronically in that UB04 format. Then we have an active box. As long as this is an active insurance, go ahead and leave it checked. If it ever becomes inactive, you can uncheck it, and then it will be hidden from your list, but still reflect on the patient's account. Now, claim processing information, we are going to come back to this button because there's a lot more in that. We're going to go ahead and go through the other tabs first, and then we'll come back to this one. So the third tab up at the top is assignment. This is for accepting assignment with your coverage plans. By default, the choice will be selected to accept assignment by coverage. If your physicians do not accept assignment by coverage, but rather by physician, you can go ahead and mark that appropriately, and then we can set up the assignment by doctor. If you do not accept assignment by coverage or by physician, you can mark that accordingly also. Most of the time, you're probably going to be okay to leave it as accept assignment and not have to worry about this particular screen. Okay. Then we have anesthesia billing. If your office does bill for anesthesia, then you can come in and set these properties up at the global level for United Healthcare. That means any patient with this insurance is going to follow these properties for your anesthesia. Okay, you can see the first part is the anesthesia units. For emergency conditions, maybe you're going to add 15 units automatically because it's an emergency situation. You can add units if the patient is less than 1. You can add units if they are over than, we'll say 70 years old. You can set that up. Okay, the time units, add 1 unit for each 15 minutes. After so many minutes, after 60 minutes, add an additional 15 units for every 10 minutes of anesthesia time. So you can set this up depending on how your office bills anesthesia. Again, if you don't bill anesthesia, don't worry about this at all. Okay, you can round time to the nearest interval, to the nearest tenth, and then when you're printing claims, you can bill units or minutes depending on what that insurance wants. Now with the CPT base units, over on the right side, you can add and say this is for United Healthcare. We can go into our anesthesia codes. So we'll go ahead and do corneal transplant on this one, and the base units for this is going to be 30. Okay, so by CPT code, you can specify the base number of units for that procedure, for that anesthesia, and then the other rules will kick in. Okay, capitation. If this is a capitated coverage, then you can go ahead and mark it accordingly. You will need to set up a capitated adjustment type. So if you're not actually billing out the claims to this insurance, then you can leave print claim to no. If you want the claim to print, you can go ahead and mark it as yes. But again, if this is not a capitated plan for you, go ahead and just leave this unchecked. There is an option for you to add non-capitated CPT codes. If a CPT code is added to this list by the right click and add, then you can go ahead and you can bill that code, and then it will file normally on a claim. Okay, so if we put in a surgery here, that surgery code will bill normally, even though this is a capitated coverage. Okay? Then we have optical benefits. Now, when optical benefits are set up at this level, this is a global level, so that means every patient who has this insurance will use these benefits unless they are specified differently at the patient's account. Okay, so if we say United Healthcare covers $105 for a frame and $95 for lenses, every patient will follow that benefit amount unless you set it up differently in that patient's account. Alright, so it might be better to not set up these global amounts unless you know for every patient with this insurance, this is just what's covered. Okay, you have frames, lenses, you have a combined max, so maybe it's 200 for frames and lenses. You can come down to the bottom for lenses and specify, a single vision high index. The benefit for that is $125, okay, or 80% up to whatever dollar amount, okay. You also have options to put in lens options. So, do they cover AR? Do they cover scratch coating? Do they cover tint, etc.? You can set those here, as well as contact lenses. But just remember, these are global settings that will carry over into every patient. Okay, so if you have a patient whose benefits are not correct, come look at your optical benefits for that coverage and see if something has been set up. Okay? Now, the last tab is eligibility. With eligibility, this is where you're going to put in the payer ID. Now, the payer ID for eligibility is different than the payer ID for claims processing. Okay, for example, for United Healthcare, we have a payer ID. But for eligibility, that payer ID might be UHC. So those are going to be different numbers. Just make sure you check with our support team or with the clearinghouse to make sure you have the correct eligibility payer ID here. Okay. We have a username and password. If there are any insurances that require that, the only one that we usually see want that information is Medicare. All others are going to default to the eligibility properties that are set up when we turn this on. So you shouldn't have to worry too much about that username and password. Now, let's go back over to claim processing. And with claim processing, we are going to go in and set up a coverage to go electronically to our clearinghouses. Okay, so claim processing, we're going to go claim processing information. Once we get into this screen, there's a few things that we're going to look at. The first up at the top, it shows we have two billing entities. We have our clinic and then we have our physician surgery center. Now, each billing entity has to be set up depending on what you want it to do. All right, by default, we have physician group, and then we have two tabs down here. We have claim processing on a 1500 or a CMS 1500, and then we have the facility fee for UB04. By default, it's going to just print this claim out on paper. Okay, we're going to go ahead and change the physician group to process electronically on that 1500 form. All right. Once you choose electronic, the first two boxes say always print secondary claims on paper and always print tertiary claims. If you want those secondary claims to go electronically, then we're going to just uncheck this box. Alright, then we say to whom the claims are sent. So in this drop down, if we click on the table, we will have a few different choices. Some of you will have Relay Health, some of you will have Gateway, and it probably has this 5010 before the clearinghouse name. The reason we have the 5010 is when we were transitioning everyone from 4010 to 5010, we just had to set up a new processing DLL, and just to keep them separate, that's the purpose of the 5010. Okay, so if we go ahead, no matter what clearinghouse you're using, Gateway or Relay Health, the setup is exactly the same. Okay, so I'm going to click OK. We're going to send these to Gateway. Now below that we have the processing properties. On the left side, it probably looks like a bunch of gibberish to you. These are just the default settings. You don't really need to worry about looking through any of that at all. Okay. Now we are going to go into our edit coverage properties. Okay, when we go into edit coverage properties, this is where we get down into more of the setup for this particular insurance. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and we're going to change this to Relay Health for just a minute.